Call the meeting to order. First order of business is public comment. If you'd like to make a comment, please come to the podium, state your name and address. Direct your comments to the board and not to the audience, and you have 3 minutes. No takers. Okay, appointments. First up is the Lee Historical Society, Jane Allen.
I'm going to pass to Laura. We have a few readings.
Okay, all right, that's fine.
I'm Laura Guine. I live on Cartland Road. I am here in regards to what Scott just said, Lee Historical Society representative. And I'm going to read a letter that was sent to the select board regarding a letter from the Joint Loss Committee. It's a little bit long, but I'll try to move right along. Can you hear me? Okay. We agree with the evaluation concerning the second floor of the Lee Historical Society Museum building. We have long been aware of this area being non-compliant with current ADA directives and have sought possible solutions to this. Awareness of the potential fire hazard situation has made it more important to act quickly to resolve this. However, having said that, we are also aware that this area now houses fully half of our exhibit space, and indeed contains the most popular exhibit, that being the one-room school. Although we consider all our exhibits important since they help fulfill our mission of telling Lee's story from its beginning to the present, the schoolroom seems to resonate most with all of our visitors. Children, of course, relate to it as it is so different from their current experience. And adults, many of whom attended these schools, love that we are presenting this past. This year, the exhibit is especially important since our president, Phyllis White, just completed her book, Students Should Not Miss a Day. We find that the exhibit promotes sales of the book, which in turn help fund our society. This year, we are fortunate to have trained 4 young docents, all Lee residents and students of Oyster River schools. Having these enthusiastic young people helps the society, but it is also important to them, as they will use this experience in writing their college entrance resumes. They each expressed interest in presenting school lessons as one of their favorite docent activities. The school has been promoted this year in the Society's media, and the promotions put out by the Lee Library for their 130th anniversary celebrations, in which we are involved. Our plans had to change for these events, leaving out the upstairs exhibits and the docents' prepared programs. Some people have suggested that we can move the schoolroom downstairs to the first floor of the museum, but this would mean displacing 11 other exhibits, all important in telling Lee's story. These downstairs exhibits and 2 others presently upstairs with the school exhibit were made possible by the Select Board's generous allowance 2 years ago to use the annex for storage and office space. We feel this may present a solution to the current problem. If the Select Board will consider allowing the Society to use the annex as exhibit space, we can move the storage and office space back to the museum building on the 2nd floor, where only staff can access it. We can move the current upstairs exhibits, including the schoolroom, to the annex. We can keep the 1st floor of the museum building as exhibit space and keep those 11 current exhibits in place. We would have room to expand our exhibits in the annex and tell more of the story of Lee in the future. If the Select Board will grant this allowance, we can make the changes quickly, having the exhibits ready for the rest of our season, keeping the promotions for the exhibits accurate. Please advise us at your earliest convenience. Thank you. The Lee Historical Society Board of Directors. And from there, I'll turn it over to Charlotte Mandel.
Hi, thank you for hearing me. Just a personal note before I read a letter that I have from Phyllis.
Name, address.
Oh,
It's
sorry,
20
7
minutes.
Jacob Lane.
There you go, there you go.
My-
When I get the eyes from the assistant town administrator,
Great.
I know that
Okay,
something's wrong.
good. Did I leave anything else out? No, okay, good. I entertained 2 visitors from Canada today, and we got to walk around Cortlandt Road, and I went over some of the historical highlights, and if we could have gone to the museum, that would have added to the experience. But that was just my own personal note on how important it is that we preserve this history. This is Phyllis White's letter. Phyllis lives on Wednesday Hill Road, for the record. To the Lee Select Board, our small town of Lee is very fortunate to have a museum building. Many small towns have only a historical society. Jan Allen, who has past experience as a curator, has done a magnificent job in creating exhibits. When I first became active in the Lee Historical Society in the 1980s, our museum was considered by many people as a place to store Lee's collectibles. Now Jan's exhibits tell Lee's historical story. I will add there was both volunteer time and expense in the creation of these exhibits. The Lee Historical Society has had a long-time partnership with the 3rd grade teachers at Mastway School. The teachers use our history booklet, Colorful Lee, New Hampshire, written by one of our past presidents, Rosemary Scott, in the classroom. Every year, the teachers bring their classes to tour the museum as part of the curriculum. The upstairs schoolroom is always a favorite part of the children's visit. The annex would provide us accessible space for this popular exhibit. It would give us better wall space for donated maps and charts, which have been waiting for preservation. With copies of my book, Students Should Not Miss a Day, The Proud History of Education in Lee, New Hampshire, at the ORMS Library and local libraries, interest in our schoolroom is growing. The Lee Historical Society would appreciate a quick resolution between us and the town. Summer and fall is a busy time for visitors to the museum. Sincerely, Phyllis White, President, Lee Historical Society. Thank you.
Janet Allen, 85 Tuttle Road. First, I'd like to say that with the library 130th anniversary, we had massive numbers of people in the museum on June 18th, and we had no exhibit to show them. For all the kids that came into the museum, they loved the downstairs, but they had all heard about the school, and we couldn't take them up there. Phyllis gave her talk on the book that she'd just written. We couldn't follow up with a tour of what we present as our one-room school. Just this past Saturday, there were 104 people outside the museum watching the bird exhibit. The original plan with the docents was to ring the school bell, bring them in, and they were going to give out copies of the maps, find their home on the map, and then find which school they would have gone to. There were lots and lots of preschoolers at the bird exhibit. The other exhibit upstairs is the preschool exhibit. Many of them were with their grandparents. They would have gone up there and seen the toys and games that Grandma and Grandpa would have played, compared them to their own. It was such a shame that the timing of this, not the fact that there's a fire hazard, that we accept, but the timing was so off. It would have been our biggest day. So I just wanted to add that. But we'd like to thank you for having us here this evening. We'd also like to thank you for letting us use the annex for storage for these past 2 years. As mentioned in the original letter, it's made a huge difference to us in that we have more than doubled our exhibits. We expanded our volunteer staff to include more docents. We increased our visitation. It's allowed us to create a vision for the future where we can tell more and more of Lee's interesting stories, present the amazing notable people and families that lived here, teach our local children not only the town history, but also the way the world worked in days past. So again, we thank you. The letter you received and Phyllis's letter explain why using the annex for exhibits will be useful to us, the society. We would like now to tell you why this expanded use of this building would also be good for the town of Lee. Several of our board members, including me, have been active on the various town center committees. As such, we've heard that among the town center buildings, the annex was least important. Maybe the hobo shed. Vibe with that. Not historic enough, and possibly should be torn down. We'd like to address that. The National Trust for Historic Preservation defines historic buildings as those that are part of a community's tangible past. The annex is certainly that. I've heard that since it's only built in 1950, it's not historical enough. I question, when does history start? And point out that events taking place, especially today and last Friday, can be historic. Lee's a small town. Our history does not always reflect the big events that get written about in the history books. But since the 1950s, many events have occurred which affected Lee residents. Wars, assassinations, inventions, cultural movements, too numerous to name, have taken place in my lifetime, which actually coincides with the life of the annex. But here in our little town, to many of the residents of the time, the annex itself played a huge part in their lives. Imagine owning a farm in 1945, and if you've read this, you notice that I changed the dates when I learned the true dates. I knew it was around then. Your whole life depends on what's in your barn. The hay, the tools, the livestock, possibly members of your family, excuse me. Barns are notorious for spontaneous fires. You call the closest fire department. Epping, Exeter, Durham, Barrington, and while you wait for them to arrive, you lose everything. In 1947, a town resident decided that was enough. He went out and bought a fire truck. He formed a group of volunteers. When they needed a more central place to store the truck, the town refused to provide the money for it. The citizens of Lee did get permission to cut trees. They milled the lumber, they built the firehouse, which became, over the years, the police station, and then the planning office. The annex may not make the history books, but to Lee farmers, I bet it was an important piece of their history. And it will continue to be that if we're allowed to use it to tell that history to the people who lived it and for the new residents who want to learn about their new home. The National Trust for Historic Preservation suggests 6 reasons to save old buildings in an article from 2015. Several apply. They have intrinsic value. They were made from quality, enduring materials, in this case, cut from our local forest. They may hold hidden treasures, which would be destroyed. New businesses prefer old buildings. If the Historical Society ever moves on, a new business might be looking for just such a building as the annex. Urban activist Jane Jacobs, in her book, The Death and Life of Great American Cities, discussed the economic advantages that certain types of businesses have when located in old buildings. She stated, old ideas can sometimes use new buildings. New ideas must use old buildings. Old buildings attract people. Americans prefer to picture themselves living around old buildings. Old buildings are reminders of a community's culture and complexity. Visitors and long-term residents recognize the aesthetics and cultural history of an area. It adds permanency and heritage. And finally, regret only goes one way. Destruction is a one-way street. Once a piece of history is lost, it's gone forever. Finding out that it should have been kept doesn't bring it back. I've worked with city planners in Troy, New York, and in the nation. Urban renewal in the 60s. More people regret that than appreciate it. For these reasons, the National Trust of Historic Preservation suggests keeping and reusing the buildings. It states that preservation is beneficial not only for a community's culture, but for its economy. The EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, in an article on its website titled "Smart Growth and Preservation of Existing Historic Buildings" states the following, and this is a quote: "A historic building or district can be a tangible symbol of a community's interest in honoring its heritage, valuing its character and sense of place, getting the most out of prior investments in infrastructure and development, and encouraging growth in already developed areas. Rehabilitating historic properties can be a critical part of promoting energy efficiency." And this I thought was fascinating. "By preserving the energy already represented in an existing building, and it's known as embodied energy, rather than expending additional energy for new construction, a new green, energy-efficient office building that includes as much as 40% of recycled materials would nevertheless take approximately 65 years to recover the energy lost in demolishing a comparable existing building." As you can see from these statements by two lead agencies in the U.S. government, having the Lee Historic Society use the annex will benefit not only the society, but the town as well. And Laura and Pat have just a couple more additional comments if you give us time.
You want me to? Yeah, sure. Okay. This will be very fast.
Can we say again, Laura Gunn, 40 Atlee Road? This will be my last time. I've got pictures here that I'm going to pass around to the selectmen. I need them back. And all I'm really going to say is, in 1947, the first volunteer fire department was organized, and up until that time, the town paid a flat sum of $25 annually to the Durham and Newmarket fire departments to fight fires in Lee. There were a few dedicated volunteers, and it wasn't until town meeting in the year 1950 that the town voted to accept the property of the Lee Volunteer Fire Department. They had gone out and gotten a truck and a few other things to be able to fight fires and to undertake to maintain the department. It was still, the members were still on a volunteer basis, and in spring of 1950, volunteers cut lumber from the town lot as a start toward building a firehouse. I believe the town lot is where the transfer station is. That's what the pictures are of the guys cutting the trees and starting the building. This was all done with volunteer labor and donations of money, materials, equipment, and services. And the firehouse neared completion in the fall of 1950. That makes that an historical building. I think I figured it's 70-some years, I forget exactly, from 1950 until today, which makes it historical. And according to the town report of 1956, the Lee Fire Department had become a source of pride to the community. And by 1966, the town was supporting the fire department, but the chief and all the men were still volunteers. In 1974, the fire department had outgrown their quarters and moved down the road, where they built a new, larger, more modern building, and that's now the highway department building. But the chief and all the men were still volunteers. They moved to a larger, no, I'm sorry, that's wrong. In 1974, they had outgrown their quarters and moved down the road where they built a new, larger, modern building completed in 75. This served their needs until 2003, when the town voted for a new safety complex, which would house both the fire department and the police department. And we still use that today. And that's the history of it. All built by town employees, town volunteers, with horses. I'll pass them around when you get through with them.
Oops.
Good evening. Patricia Jenkins, 9 Harvey Mill Road in South Lee. That used to be on the map, you know. That was a very definite place of its own over there with our stores and whatnot, talking about history tonight. I don't think there's much more that we can say about why. Or maybe we need to go into how and a few more things, but I would like to point out that the Lee Historical Society has grown considerably in the past few years, very few, with the addition of Jan Allen, as you can see from the way she speaks. We really are on the move. And all of a sudden, we lost half of our exhibit. No fault of yours, no, nobody's blaming. But we need to keep the momentum. Yes, I believe we need to keep the building, but that's not my decision. But in the meantime, while the building is there, we would like to use it. It would do a number of things for the Historical Society. Obviously, it is going to give us more space. It is going to let us set up displays and still have room where this display or the schoolroom is now for storage. While we're using the annex, we have office space, we have record storage space, we have research space. Do you realize how many people are interested in their genealogies? How many people are getting in touch with the Historical Society? Yes, there's a lot of it, and we would like to keep it going. So the museum obviously is very important to us. The whole Historical Society is very important to us. There are many ways that the Historical Society needs to grow. We need to grow our treasury. The use of the annex could help with that. It gives a place to have exhibits. It gives a place to have demonstrations. It gives a place for people to come and actually pay to do something. It gives a place for us to really promote, grow, and have a treasury that means something. Yes, we've grown a lot, monetarily as well. We have income now that we have never had before. And using the annex will continue that. So we definitely are interested in reuse, reduce and recycle. Remember that old statement? Okay. But we are also interested in using it to the town's advantage now. So think about fundraisers. We can do them there. Think about more children coming in. Think about more adults that are interested. What do people do when they get together for holidays? They reminisce. They talk about what was in the past. Do you remember? How did they do that? That's our purpose. Okay? Thank you very much.
Is that, any questions from the board? To any of the presenters? There was a whole bunch.
I guess I had a question about what your hours of operation are.
I'm sorry?
At the moment, we're open the first and third Saturday from 10 to 2.
Third Saturday of every month from 10 to 2. We had hopes to expand that as we get more docents, which we have this year. So
And you guys only run summer and fall?
we run from April through November. And then we have other programs almost every month now.
Heat in the annex. We could be there.
Yeah, one of the reasons we have not been able to open in the winter is because there's no heat, or not efficient heat in the museum building. There's no bathroom. So the annex would also give us those two basic needs.
How is the boiler in the annex? It's on the list of things that need to be fixed.
I think so.
It is. I wasn't sure how good it was.
Mrs. Jenkins?
Could I also add that, yes, we're only open those Saturdays, but we also have private tours, and we have all the children's programs. We have, they aren't listed in those times.
Oh, my main concern actually is what months you're open, because the boiler, the annex is on our list of things that is likely to go very soon. So I don't, I'm more concerned about what months you were thinking to be in there
Okay.
than the
Basic.
hours.
What I've done in the past 2 years is use the winter months for preparing exhibits. Most of the museums in New Hampshire don't open until April. So we follow their schedule.
Yeah.
We've had programs here downstairs a lot of times if we had winter programs. April is about the earliest that we can open. November is the latest usually, just due to the weather.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I just had a few things. I think that this problem is several layers deep, and I just want to try to address some of them. I have been with you guys and was very happy to be part of the Historical Society for quite a while. My daughter loved being a docent. I am a huge fan of what you do, so you know that. I think I've sat there and I've sat here, and I think that the thing that is really important for us to all understand is there are very limited funds that we get as a tax base and that we have. And so while we're sitting here looking at, there's things we did, like we paid to replace the porch in front of the Historical Society. That money could have been used for a rec director, which we don't have because we didn't have funding for. There's nothing that's free that we're not having something else. So that doesn't mean that that's not incredibly important. It just means we have to be honest with how we're using the funding. I have done a great deal of research into how other historical societies work in towns, and very often what happens is the town, if it's very generous, will donate the building, and then that becomes the responsibility of the historical society, and then that is something that goes forward. In a place like Portsmouth, they can hire employees, and they have amazing fundraisers, and it's really easy. We are a very small town; it's much harder. I know when I was part of the group, I often talked about if we could have interns from UNH, there'd be funding, there'd be a lot of change, and we could be open more often. We couldn't do that because we were in the building that didn't have heat, and they of course wouldn't give us interns who would freeze. So I very much appreciate that. Having the annex will open up an enormous quantity of doors. What concerns me as somebody who's sitting here trying to figure out how do we make sure all the needs are met is it's incredibly easy for all of us to appreciate the value of each of the historical buildings in our town, and I love the history of them all. What worries me is that I don't think this town can handle fixing them all. And so I have been looking since I got here for other alternative ways. How do we handle the parish house? What do we do with the tramp shed? How do we handle these things? They're not free. The roofs cost, tens of thousands of dollars. The lead paint, the maintenance, the boilers, all these things are incredibly expensive. So as much as I want to save everything possible, I have to figure out how we can do that. The priority seems to be in this town that we really put some money into the town hall, which we currently don't have and don't have available. That's an enormous expense. We are also renovating the library, another huge expense. We absolutely care about our historical buildings, and we are absolutely doing what we can to repair them and use them. The question is, can we afford all of them? And if not, because as we do the numbers, I really honestly don't know how we can pay for all these things. Is there an option going forward? One thing that's been brought up to me is if we use the annex more often, electricity and heating is going way up. It's one thing to heat the annex to 50 to keep the water from boiling, it's another to keep it warm enough. Have we insulated it? Is it, energy efficient? We're hitting an incredibly challenging time where we have already maxed out some of our budgets for the whole year, and we've even started. So we have huge expenses coming for electricity and heat, those kinds of things. So all that being said, I think there's a way forward, but I do think that it's going to be a little bit less of only risk on the town side and just paying for everything, and more of a shared, it's possible that we can find a way to give the annex to the Historical Society or to give that responsibility, but then that means that becomes your responsibility to save for and plan for and get grants for. If you wanted to continue to have both buildings, then how do we fit the things we need into that town center? Is one movable? That kind of thing. I just think we need to have more conversations around these things, because I agree 100%. Let's save everything we can, bless you. But let's also make sure that we can pay for the things the town needs all together. And bringing together community is one of the most vital things for the well-being of the entire community. The Historical Society can be part of that. There's other ways to do that as well, and I want to make sure that we have the funding and the space for all those areas. Yes.
Speaking just in the short term, while these,
Oh, please.
Charlotte Mandel.
No, it's to the microphone, or it doesn't get recorded.
Yeah.
Oh,
All right.
okay. Hi, Charlotte Mandel, Leo, 7 Jacob Lane. Speaking in the short term, while these lengthy decisions are being made, and they have been discussed now for, I think, 2 years, is that accurate?
Oh, I feel like we've been discussing all these things for decades, but yeah.
Right, yes. The cost of moving the exhibits to the annex temporarily, even if we can't heat it in the coldest months, I don't see how that would be a source of expense for the town.
Correct.
Dan,
We've had a rather informal position where when the building was given to us, the museum building was given to the Historical Society, and we asked the town to make it part of the town buildings. Right? I'm looking at the people who were there.
Checking.
And the agreement seems to be that the town takes care of the outside of the building and the electric and the heat, because it's attached to the other buildings. It's not separately metered. We take care of the inside of the building. We have recently painted every wall in there, painted most of the ceilings. I have been in the process until this came up, until the porch actually started limiting access, to find an electrician that we were going to expand the lighting, with the knowledge that we had to be careful of how much we did that, but we were going to pay for that. The annex has to be heated because of the water. Whether we're in there or not, it has to be heated. Unless it's turned off completely, and I suppose that can happen, but that has its own problems. We would probably be willing to take care of the inside of the building, The outside of the building, it needs paint. There are a couple things on the fire code that need to be addressed. We're doing fundraising, as you know. We are getting more visitation, more membership, and with more space, more exhibits that we can promote. We have a higher visitation and a higher need, which means we can get more funding in. We can go out and get grants. We can get preservation grants. We've already listed as historical buildings. So there is that opportunity for the society to become on its own, so that we wouldn't be a drain on the town. And I do understand that. I pay taxes. And my husband isn't here because he doesn't like paying the taxes. So although he supports me, he doesn't support higher taxes. So I understand. But there is a middle ground. And since we already are using the building for storage, for office space, and that might continue there, we would try to figure out how we would use the building. Basically, it means bringing however many people in once a month for a Saturday. It's really not asking too much. We would certainly pay to bring the exhibits in. We paid to have the storage people come in and move things, and we're certainly willing to do that again. So I don't think it would be quite the drain, and the town center still hasn't made decisions on what they're doing with the building, so they're maintaining it to the point that it needs to be maintained. We could use it, and if something's going wrong, like the fire alarm has been going off. It was going off again last week. Nobody goes in there. I went in to do something and reported to the town, hey, it's going off again, somebody needs to address it. The problems that do come up, we can address because we'll be in there. If no one goes in there, you won't know what's happening. So there are advantages to it. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Do we know if there's anything that needs to be done to the building in order to make it?
There's some particular things that the fire code people said have to be addressed.
Okay.
There's an issue with the door between the boiler. I don't remember, there's like 4 things. They're relatively small, but
I don't think anything major stuck out at all.
yeah. So I understand what you're saying in terms of, I think if the board's amenable, if we give them permission to use it on a temporary basis, not forever and ever and ever and ever, because we still don't know what we're doing at town center, but allow them to at least recover from this thing that kind of like the town is kind of like, I don't want to say sprung on them, but kind of like, can't use the second floor? Sorry. The other thing I would ask, which it sounds like the Historical Society is amenable, is we know how much approximately it costs to run it with nobody in there. I would ask the Historical Society to take up the cost of whatever that differential is. So if they choose to run the heat at 90 degrees because they're having a luau in there, that's their responsibility, not the town's. So I believe, Andy, we do have the number in terms of what that is on a regular basis.
We do for the electricity. I'm not sure that we do for fuel oils and the heat, but it's certainly something
Is there-
we can look into.
But it runs off that same 1,000-gallon tank though, right? So how do, but it's
Yeah,
all building, all the buildings.
Right, which services all those buildings. So.
It doesn't, I mean, any increase though would have to be from increased use, which would then be, because the annex is being used more.
You'd have, well, so is the town hall.
Yeah, the library runs off the same thing, so you can't tell which one it is, so.
The library's not increased use, right? You're talking about the increasing use of the town.
So I don't know how we figure out the heat part of it. The thing is, if they're there from April to November, they're not gonna use that
Right,
much.
that's what I was
anyway.
wondering.
So,
Is the Historical Society also amenable to fixing any of the fire code issues themselves?
Yeah, I noticed that the exit signs are just paper exit signs.
Oh,
So I don't know how, personally, I don't know how to install an electric one or a lighted one. You know, but we can certainly negotiate it. I would assume it needs to be done whether we're in there or not. And the other is, they say there has to be a self-closing door to the furnace room. And what's there is a metal door. But I don't know if you could just put on a spring thing that makes it close by itself and latches. It does latch pretty hard with the keys in it.
So maybe what we can do is give the permission to do this with the understanding that they're going to assist with the costs of those particular things. I wouldn't want, because the town has some responsibility. That particular building is the town's building, just like the museum says. So I think we have some responsibility. So maybe 50-50 or something like that, maybe. I think that's something, if we find out what the cost of doing all those things, maybe we can have another conversation.
I can very definitely get you the exact electrical cost and see what I can figure out with regard to heat, and I'll also review the fire recommendations with Assistant Chief Laporto and see specifically what he was looking at corrected.
And if that big building becomes a historical society building, I'd like to have them have it without limitation, like they can host events or have, use it as they see fit if they're helping to pay for it, so it's not, as that transitions over to becoming their building.
I think in the interim, I don't want to put words in their mouth, but I think in the interim, they'd just like a space to put the schoolroom and stuff like that.
Right, but I think they're mentioning a lot of opportunities of other things that can happen, and I would want them to be able to do that, because that, as they said, that's how you can do fundraisers and how you can grow, and I think that's really important. I know that schoolroom is pretty vital to.
Yeah. Well, it's popular.
Yeah, it was my daughter's favorite thing.
So, any other questions? Oh, I'm sorry. Is anybody from the audience have any questions? I don't want to leave anybody out. No? All set. So I have a motion. I think I'd like to tweak it a little bit, if that's okay. I'm winging it here. So the first part, I move to approve the Lee Historical Society's permission to utilize the town annex building for museum exhibits and allow the public access to said building during open museum hours. And the town and the Historical Society will need to share costs of renovating the structure so it's up to code with the things that were identified in the joint loss.
The Joint Loss Management Committee Life Safety Report,
Okay.
Yes, that big thing.
which I would add that the Joint Loss Management Committee voted to have me sign the letter that was sent to you. That was not of my own accord.
That's not part of my motion, sorry. Do I have a second?
I'll second, as long as we're doing this, I think it would be important for us to reassess again down the road when we
That's
know
fine.
more about what our plans are. Okay.
That's fine, because he's gonna come back with the costs. So
Right.
at that point, we're gonna have to have a discussion with the Historical Society about how that's shared.
Right, I just want to make sure we're being fair and that they're not putting money into something, like, I just want to make sure we're always communicating and making it so that they can plan for the future.
Okay.
So second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
This is the annex we're building upstairs, correct?
Just the units.
No current repairs to the
No.
museum, okay.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those against? All those abstaining? I will abstain because
Good choice. Great.
I'll be the reason. Well, maybe I'll know. It's fine. Okay, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Deb Sugarman?
Deb Sugarman, 135 Stepping Stone Road. I'm having a birthday party at the Pavilion on July 23rd, and I'm here to request electricity.
Not your birthday party.
Yes.
No.
No.
Yeah,
My birthday's around there. Can I come too?
absolutely.
Okay, all right.
Why not? Have a birthday.
So,
So I don't know what I have to do now.
the reason this is coming to us is because it's not the number of people, it's the electricity.
Electricity.
Okay. And what's our procedure for doing that? Because we have to turn it on and then turn it off and,
We do have a procedure that we run through Department of Public Works to do that.
okay,
We've done it for several other groups already this season.
okay.
So what we've been doing is
We've done
providing
it for
nonprofits.
groups, yes, but not for personal.
Right. So do we have something in place for when it's something that's personal versus something that's open to the whole public? Because I think that's what we talked about before, anything, people couldn't have like a wedding. But we were gonna discuss how to make that
We
happen.
don't have anything in place at this point.
Okay.
It differentiates.
Because we've done personal things before. Seems like we have.
Yeah.
Not with electricity.
Oh, not with electricity.
No, birthday parties happen all the time. We've only said yes to electricity for
In fact, four of them
a
happened
few,
this
a
weekend.
couple things, like the moth, the
Oh, yeah.
Conservation Commission has a moth thing.
Is there a known expense that we can be aware of, or?
I mean, electricity is going to increase by 100% in the future. That's
Right.
the only cost that we know.
But it's also only so much for a few hours, especially from 4 to 8 where it's light out. I can't imagine it's too much.
We just have to think of the future.
Right, so should we be working on a plan
I
for
get a lot of
private?
requests.
Right, exactly.
We have a plan that is about 75% complete that's going to come up again this evening as well.
Oh,
Okay,
it might not include residents.
What was that?
might not include residents.
But the discussion, which going to come up a little bit later, is to whether we wanted, and what I had discussed with several department heads, is whether we want to have a fee structure presented to the board with an eye towards non-residents using the pavilion and Little River Park in particular.
Non-residents, okay.
Right.
Could there be a layer effect? So if you have somebody who has donated X number of hours in volunteer time to the town, that's one thing. No, is that not a thing?
Let's get messy.
That is,
I'm
that
just
is not in the bedrock
All
at the
right,
moment.
all right,
I'll
all right,
tell
all
you,
right.
but-
I'm just thinking because when,
Sorry.
one of the things we're trying to do is get people to participate and volunteer. So I was just thinking that's one way that you could have a benefit that, you know.
This is gonna come up again.
Yeah, potentially.
So, your plan, what, this is like a band, or is this like? a
No, it was
jukebox?
gonna be a band, but it's just music.
Sound system.
Yeah, sound system, there you go. Whatever.
Very small.
I think we need to set up a fee structure for this particular thing. One, because somebody has to actually go down there and turn it on and turn it off.
I'm fine with that. I'm charging my guests, so.
How much are you charging them? Until we know anything more, I'm just gonna throw a number out. How about if we charge for, before our block, we charge $10? That's for each resident, or each guest. I'm just kidding. Other than that, I don't know. I think we need to come up with some particular number for, because this is gonna come up again.
Okay.
So,
As I said, we are just about there, about the only thing we haven't plugged in is the actual dollar amounts for each facility.
So could we grandfather this party in and then say, going
Well-
forward, we're gonna have a plan and then,
yeah.
that will be going forward, but this event, since we don't have something in place, and it's less than 50 people.
Well, the
Yeah,
party's
because-
not until July 23rd, so we can decide something before that.
I would take the $10 now and just be done with it. Because I think-
Throw you a bone, Deb.
I'm throwing the $10 out because I think it's kind of reasonable. I
Right.
think if we go through, if we're having Steve Bullock go down and do it,
Right.
you can't afford him doing that. So,
I'll take 10.
yeah, so I would propose that we charge $10 for a 4-hour block
Until we come up with.
until we come up with a more permanent plan.
Residents or non-residents?
Residents
everybody?
only, to throw.
Yes, because he's gonna deal with non-residents in some other fashion. And there's no mention of volunteer hours, because that's,
That's fine. I'm seeing someone who participates deeply in the town and.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Make sure that
This
there's
is just for
benefit.
electricity.
Right, exactly. Well, and yeah,
And those residents, if they want electricity.
that's what, right now.
Until next meeting.
until, yeah.
Till changed.
So she can go ahead and plan the
This will pay
party.
for Joanne's cost to do the invoice.
Okay.
Do I just give you a check?
Let's not, yes, how about if we, when they do their application going forward, they pay whatever their thing is, so.
I think if you look into what it costs to have So I think we'll have to do some deeper dives. And if you have a nonprofit or something that's open to the entire public, that's a very different situation than a person's private party.
Yes.
If you look at a private party, there's no place you can have a group that large for less than $50 around. So it is an opportunity for the town to
Yep.
talk about how we're going to go forward.
It's one of the reasons that another concern will be coming out shortly. We have a tremendous number of groups from communities around Lee that realize that there is no particular charge for a fine pavilion
Right.
in a nice field. And we had 3 birthday parties in a row this past Sunday,
Right.
And
events on
We-
Saturday.
Yeah, that's why I told Deb that she should take the $10 and
I took it.
Alright.
Take your run, plan your party, and then let's figure this out a
if
little more
Deb
carefully.
can give the town a check for $10, then we don't have to do the invoicing, because that's
you go.
just another thing for her to do.
Right, I think we just have to be very careful going forward because this is an opportunity that can get.
Yep.
It's coming, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Ready for it.
We're in a party now.
So I move to grant Deb Sugar Orange Express to turn on and provide electricity at the Randy Stevens Pavilion in Woodbury Park on Thursday, July 28th, from 4 to 8 p.m. for her birthday celebration. I will not ask how old she is.
July 23rd.
23rd.
23rd, it says 20.
Ooh, 20.
Yeah, somebody made a mistake.
It says 23. Mine says 28.
23 is
That's
the
just
top,
his,
and I
right?
know.
Yeah, 23rd.
Oh, the copy I have says.
That's what Deborah.
Oh, I'm reading this.
Oh, there you go.
All right, so I'll change that to July 23rd instead of the 28th. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Happy birthday, Deb.
Thanks.
Steve Bullock, Steve's not here, so is somebody, oh.
Yeah, a couple of us are going to speak to
Okay.
Steve's issues.
The first issue is Durgan Preserve. Steve called me. He's having a lot of problems with people moving the dock. And they moved it so much this last time, it moved it off the concrete pillars that he had it moored to in the water. He said there was a great deal of trash down there. I spoke to all of our officers today. They haven't been having any problems like we've had in years past, finding people down there in the middle of the night. So these are probably just people who are going there to use it. I had a conversation with Mr. Lilio, who's seated in the back. He and some of his friends use it frequently to launch their canoes and kayaks. And he said actually that dock is more of a hindrance than it is a benefit. Steve at first, he said, was just shut it down, and he was upset. It's a lot of extra work for him. My thought was maybe we could close the gate at night because you're not supposed to be in there after dark anyway. So I talked to Steve, talking with Andy, both Andys. I think what we'll do is probably pull the dock out first and see if that cuts down on some of the issue. They obviously won't be able to move it around, so that won't be a problem for Steve. And maybe it'll make it more of an area where people will want to take care of it because it'll look more like a little beach area that they can utilize.
Is there a trash receptacle down there someplace for them to utilize?
It's supposed to be carry in, carry out, so much as the next problem you're gonna hear about.
Is there a sign there that says that?
There is. I think to Tom's point about removing the dock, I know I'm an avid kayaker and canoeer, and I would far prefer to launch from shore than off a dock, and I suspect many other kayakers and canoers would. The other thing that I told Steve that I would tell the board, just as an advisement, the Durgan Preserve is actually under an easement that's held by the Society for New Hampshire Forests. It is also under the auspices of the Conservation Commission supervision, and money from the Department of the Interior and National Park Service was used to develop that. So I think there's probably a little more input. If you did decide you were going to lock the gate, and this was Steve's first proposal, was we should just lock the gate. I said it may not be that simple, and I will certainly tell the board that there are other factors involved here that they may need to consider. I'm sure you're aware of that, but wanted to bring it up.
So are we okay with just removing the dock for now?
What is the dock used for? I'm just curious.
I think maybe about the only thing would be people fishing off of or diving off of it. But I know a woman had posted on Neighbor Lee that her child went into the water with water shoes on and got hooked by a lure
Yeah.
that had broken off,
Love
so.
fishing over there.
Yeah, that's, yeah.
It's tough having mixed use right there in that one spot.
Okay, remove it,
Mhm.
and can Steve and whoever else is monitoring it keep us surprised if things change? Okay. Do we need a motion to remove the dock? I think it's the general consensus. I don't think I didn't have a motion to the package.
He didn't request a motion, but I think.
So I think it's the general consensus of the board here that the dock be removed and that the chief, police chief and the public works director monitor the situation and let us know if anything changes. Would you guys concur with that?
I would
Agreed.
agree, yeah.
Okay.
And I told Steve I'd let him know, so we'll wait for the next subject.
Okay.
Subject number 2.
Next subject.
You'll let us know.
Steve had talked to the police chief and myself about his concerns over trash at Little River Park. And essentially, his biggest concern is that on Saturdays and Sundays, he's been requesting somebody from DPW to come in and clean up trash. Essentially, the 2 trash cans we have there are full and overflowing. In discussing this with Steve a little further, he's concerned about leaving it until Monday because there's often food in it, and if they leave it until Monday, between raccoons, skunks, and whoever else wanders down there to have a free dinner, it gets spread around the area and is much more difficult to clean up. He had spoken with me again about possible fees for, not for residents, but for non-resident use, and we've had a fair number of, and I call it sort of quasi non-resident use. A lot of it are sporting teams or youth associations from the area that may be based in Durham, but include kids from Lee and families from Lee. So that's a gray area that might have to be identified. But he had a couple of suggestions. One was to make Little River Park carry in, carry out, and not provide trash receptacles, although in discussion we weren't sure how effective that would be. And came back to sort of settle on increased education about taking care of your trash and fees, particularly for non-residents that are using the area. I don't know if that sums up what he said to you, Tom?
Yeah, and, we've also, unfortunately, we've had somebody recently go in and smear human waste inside the porta potty. So it's just, how do you control that? That's. But
That
it's
isn't
an added
necessarily
cost.
somebody using the park. They might be stopping just to.
Right, you never know. You never know.
And not having a bathroom there would be.
Oh, no, you have to have a bathroom there, but it's just one of the
one more
many
expenses, right?
issues that are happening down there that is frustrating Steve.
So there's 2 trash can receptacles?
Well, my recollection is there are 2 trash cans at the pavilion.
They're at the front.
Yep.
Maybe one at each corner.
Is there
And we
any
might
way to
not
have
overflow as
like a
much?
closed, you
Yeah.
have a party and you know that part of the rule is you clean up all the trash
Mhm.
around your party and then you put it in that closed thing and then once a week you can put that in the.
I think what's
Maybe
happening is we're
dumpster?
getting so much
Yeah.
use at this point that
Right.
the trash cans are filling very quickly.
Right.
People they're not necessarily throwing loose trash. I know on a couple of occasions, they have bagged it up and tied the
Right.
bags in knots and left it next to the trash receptacle. And
So I know what you're saying, if we had a dumpster.
Right, so you have something that's closed, bear proof, all that stuff, and like, I know we've been there and we've been like, what do we do with all this trash? And it wasn't all ours, it's kind of weird to bring it, but, we want to help out, so if we could put it someplace, and you could say, when you rent the facility, you're responsible for all the trash, has to get put in bags and put into the thing and fresh. Or something, so that,
Maybe if we add 2 more trash cans, so there's one at each corner of the
Yeah.
pavilion, they won't fill up as much.
I would think adding trash cans might be a better solution than a dumpster. If you put a dumpster down there, you're going to have people that miss the day at the transfer
yeah,
station
that's a
swinging
good
by
point.
and.
Good point. All right, so more trash cans available, and are they covered, or they're just the ones that are open?
These have, the ones down there have a cover on them. It's not bear proof, but if you-
Door.
That's right, okay.
So let's get two more and put them down in the other corners. And let's see if that addresses the particular issue. I think what we're experiencing is growing pains.
Right.
And people
It's
getting out.
It's a
to it more
popular
again.
spot,
Right.
Yeah.
which is good. We built it for people to use,
We
so.
built it nice and then people are coming, so you
Right.
have to deal with the people coming, so it's part of the.
But people tend to, the more we keep it up, the more they're likely to do
Yeah.
that as well. So we have to keep how we can stay ahead of it.
It's busy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they
It's
have,
like a
do they sign a
full-time job
rental
to do this.
agreement when they want to borrow the pavilion? Do they sign a rental agreement?
They're doing an application with me.
Just like Deb's, or is there
Yeah.
a further one?
Yeah, well, there's other pages attached to that say all the rules.
And we have in there that like you bag your trash and you
Oh,
take
yes,
it with
it's
you?
carry in, carry in, yep. And I tell them every time, I tell them over the phone.
I will say that this spring has been incredibly busy, and correct me if I'm wrong, Denise, but Denise has led me to believe that this is the busiest it's ever been since she's been here with people booking.
Well, last year was COVID, ever since COVID, it's just been.
And everything is
it's
record breaking
everything's
because everyone that has not done something is now excited to go to things. So everything I've been to, this is the biggest we've ever had. So I just think this is a really,
And 90% is birthday parties.
right, right. Which is such a great thing that you can have birthday parties and not have to clean your house and everyone's gonna have a great time. But you have to have, trust me, that's a big deal. You have to have a way to participate in the cleaning up of that as well, so.
And right now we charge nothing.
Right.
Okay, so when's that discussion? Where is that on?
We
here?
don't have enough money in town and this is
People
not
for
much
me.
money.
People for
Right,
Yeah.
that's, right.
What item number is that on there, or is this that time?
Yeah, she's excited.
We will, that was the Little River Park discussion where I was gonna also mention that, but I can bring a fee structure to the next meeting. As I said, we have a proposal, we just,
The rec track is working on it, right? That's what we have tasked for his department. No?
Karen has been talking with me because a
Okay.
big part of the facility is the actual field usage, and
Right.
you did have and been some charge for field usage. You can rent a baseball field.
That goes through ROA.
That fee goes to ROA, this $30 per hour?
Right,
No,
so
I mean,
we're not making money.
it goes through them. They do the.
And then
They do the
field stuff.
scheduling.
Yeah, they do the scheduling.
And then they use the money to help with the fields, is that correct? So we're not making any money to pay the people that we have to
I'm not
pay.
sure of that at all. You need to let me double check on that because,
I definitely think we need a fee schedule. I'd like to talk about that next time if you can
yep, I can certainly
put
bring
it
that.
together.
Yep.
And I definitely think that, I agree with, I assume this is Steve's request here to
Yeah.
document people who are making mess, make sure that they don't just use it
I
again.
keep track as
Yeah.
best I can.
Yeah, I mean, obviously. but
And
I
Denise
don't-
has contacted people that have been identified as possibly not
Right.
being the
It's just
stewards of the
hard
park.
to know if you had an event and you were doing it right, but then somebody else came and just put a ton of trash. It's hard to suss that out.
If it keeps
Well,
happening,
yeah.
maybe there's a use for a trail cam or something
Yeah.
to keep track of it.
It used to be easier to narrow it down. Now when you have back-to-back parties.
Right, it's impossible.
3 in a day.
Right.
It's not easy.
We should have one of those surveillance drones.
Okay, I thought my trail cam was reasonable.
All right.
Yeah.
Anything else? We all set? Library trustees, Annie Zazowski, please.
Annie Gazowski, Lamprey Lane, and Chair of the Library Trustees. We are requesting that the Select Board would allow us to extend for another year the expend of the $100,000 warrant article that we had on the warrant a year ago or so. And up until this point, we have expended $15,117.08. And the chair of the trustee of the trust funds, John Tappan, was at one of our trustee meetings and pointed out to us that under the RSA 32:7, that this can happen if the select board would okay it, and we can carry on and expend the money through 24.
23.
23, sorry.
23.
It's important when you do this, and I talked to John earlier, that we use the word appropriations as opposed to funding, because the funding is not going to expire, but the appropriation will, so that's why there's some scribbles on them.
Perfect.
Yeah, I had my paper script on.
Denise went to that end of the table and scribbled on it.
Yes, yes. I know who scribbled.
All right, so we.
Anything else? Any questions? No? Any?
No.
All right, I move to approve extending the use of appropriation in the library capital reserve fund until June 30th, 2023. Do I have a second?
Second?
Any discussion?
No.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oh, you have a question? No? What?
Oh, they're scowling at us.
He always scowls.
Oh, that's true.
Going once, going twice.
Definitely has a comment.
Uh-oh.
So, John Tappan, 187 Stepping Stones Road, and also Chair of the Trustees of Trust Funds. And the statute states that the local governing body may, at any properly noticed meeting held prior to the end of the fiscal year for which the appropriation is made, vote to treat that appropriation as encumbered for a maximum of one additional fiscal year. So I was just listening for some words like treat the appropriation as encumbered
That's
for
not in
1
there.
year.
And what was written down is move to approve extending the use of there needs to be a the in there, the appropriation in the library capital reserve fund until June 30th, 2023. So you want encumbering?
Well,
It's not encumbered though.
it is, I'm just reading from the statute, vote to treat that appropriation as encumbered for a maximum of one additional fiscal year. So we don't have very many appropriations from that fund. The wording that you have doesn't state what appropriation it is. We do know that it's the appropriation from 2021. I think that your wording is marginal. We understand what it is you're trying to say. It is an improvement over what was originally written.
We're essentially saying what we had until this year, we're going to extend to the year.
So how about, I still have a motion on the table though, how about move to approve extending the use of the $100,000 appropriation from FY 2021 in the library capital reserve fund until June 30th, 2023.
Does that work?
It doesn't.
Great, second.
Wait, hold on, you've got a motion on the table. Will you withdraw your second to the first motion?
I did, and I'll give you a
I will
new
withdraw
second.
my motion. Now we're clear. All right, I move to approve extending the use of the $100,000 appropriation from fiscal year 2021 in the library capital reserve fund until June 30th, 2023. Do I have a second?
Second?
Any discussion?
No.
Going once, going twice, going thrice. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
Bureaucracy is fun.
You're all set. You can go home. If you want. You can stay if you want to. All right. Karen Wassey's not here, so are you doing?
Yeah, I'll speak to that. Karen had wanted to present the emergency operation plan that we've been working on every day since before my time, for about the last year. I believe it started last year in May. And this is an updated emergency operations plan that has been prepared by department heads, other folks working on it, under the guidance of Jane Hubbard at Hubbard Consulting. Typically, you update your emergency operations plan every 5 years, and this was done with an EMPG grant through Homeland Security here in New Hampshire. And essentially, this has been edited down to the format that it was presented and needs to be adopted by the board as the new updated emergency operations plan, not emergency management.
Any questions?
I went through all of it and all my questions I asked earlier and feel very comfortable with it.
You all set? All right, move to adopt the Town of Lee Emergency Operations Plan as presented. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? No? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
You need to sign that.
And what were things that have taken years and years to happen actually happen?
Save your wrist this evening, we have 3 inches of documents. that
Just
need
check.
signatures.
Yeah, just check.
Possible.
Well, there you go. I'll make the child so I put my pocketbook.
Oh, that's pretty sneaky
Hold
of you,
on.
yeah.
It looks hungry.
Hold on, let me see. Oh, nope, he does.
All right.
Special place guide, so that's probably not what we figured out.
All right, I'll sit underneath 3. Number 4, Town Administrator.
Yes, first order of business. I was contacted by Deb Sugarman, who has been gifted a horse chestnut tree. And horse chestnut trees have some historical significance, particularly in this part of New Hampshire. Deb told me that she thought the tree was too wonderful a gift to keep in her backyard, and she would like to donate it to the town. So I told her I would bring that to the board's attention. I also asked her if she had any particular thoughts as to where she might want to see a horse chestnut tree in Lee, and said that I would ask the board the same. So I'm bringing that to you this evening. Deb has advised me that it is well potted and does not need to be immediately transplanted, but obviously.
Sooner the better.
Can we get the,
Yes.
what's the word?
Conservation?
No, the, what's it painting? It's, what's that called? Sorry, I'm blanking on it.
Well, you're
It's
thinking-
providence. Can we get its providence of this particular tree, because it's not just any.
No, it's not.
Yes.
Is this, and Deb had provided some information regarding the tree in Portsmouth.
Oh.
It has national fame.
Very nice.
Yeah, it was, the original tree was planted in 1776 when William Whipple returned home from Philadelphia after signing the Declaration of
My
Independence.
goodness.
Yeah.
So we're about to lose a bunch of trees at the cemetery. Is that an option?
I looked it up and it needs shady, moist
Oh, no, that's not an
soil.
option.
That's
So
not.
Where do we have shady, moist
So-
soil? That would be prominent.
Can we talk to the conservation
Yes.
committee?
Let's go with Rebecca's idea that I
Great.
think we'd love to have it, but can we get the Conservation Commission to tell us where we'd like to have it?
Okay, I can ask them.
Because
It's very exciting.
they
No,
would
it is
have a
very
big
exciting.
number.
That's their soil.
Yeah, because anything on the hill's gonna be.
I know a lot about soil, and if it needs shady, moist soil, we need to find it then. Otherwise, it's not gonna last.
Well, thank you for the gift, that's
Yeah.
very sweet.
Does it need a mate to
Does it need a mate? Oh, I have no idea.
become a?
I was only given one, so.
All right. Some trees are happier with one, some not. You don't want a male pinko, I know that.
Can we ask the
One of these
conservation
ones.
committee that as well?
Yes.
I think the only thing you have to be careful about is people don't like horse chestnuts next to gardens or other valuable plants because
Yes.
their roots can be toxic to quite a number of other trees.
We also don't want them near where little critters will want to, so you have to really think about it. All the things you think about with the tree, planting a tree is a big deal.
While I'm up here, can I make another comment?
Mhm.
So this is about the stuff you were talking about Durgan Park and Little River Park. My experience being on the Trails Committee is that before we were there, people were all over the trails, making markings, making all slashes on trees. Now that we're there and people know that someone's in charge, it's totally different.
That's what I was trying to say, if you have it, if it's really clean and kept up, it's like the, what is that, the broken window theory or something
Yeah.
where, so as long as we really have a plan.
Which means that might mean, having the police go by every so often, just so people know that, and I mean, I'm sure you probably do, but.
I'm sorry, I was talking to your
Oh,
husband.
that's okay.
Or having somebody that is in charge of making sure the trash is done on the weekend or something, I just don't know who that would be.
Something, it
Something.
was just something that I was real surprised about, but it made a huge, huge difference.
Right.
So,
There isn't anyone that's on at the transfer station that on a Saturday anyway that could do something like that?
Could ask.
I'm just trying to think, who's already working, how do we use that? Because if we help keep it clean, everyone else will keep it clean too. It's when we let it get messy that
Well,
everything gets messy.
let's ask the public works director
Yeah.
if that's something they can work
And
into.
the other piece was, now people know that there's a trails committee and we are in charge of the trails.
Right, so there's no more of this,
Yeah.
we gotta figure out what to do.
Yeah, no big, yeah, it's not a rogue thing.
No,
Okay,
the rogue days are over.
Yes. Just a thought.
thank you, Deb. All right, next.
Yes, I had the heating strategic plan, and this, I just wanted to put a bug in everyone's ear, and certainly will, department heads as well, although they're all keenly aware. As you're aware, both Eversource and Co-op of New Hampshire have announced that they are going to double electricity rate charges. And I'm going to be talking about fuel bid up next, but we're also, it's anticipated that we'll be looking at, between $6 and $7 a gallon headed into heating season in the fall. So I just wanted to plant the bug that if there are buildings that we don't need to heat, that sort of thing, and fortunately the library people have left, but I don't know the exact expense of keeping the town hall heated and lit through the winter for excess programs, and just wanted to have a discussion with the board, maybe not now, but as we get closer to the fall, about what sort of strategy we might use to try to stay with the
Well,
budget.
I think the same thing that we just did with the Historical Society, we should do with the library, because we said that right up front, what does it cost for electricity and stuff on an ongoing basis? If they're gonna be utilizing it during the cold periods, that's gonna be a cost that's gonna have to be passed on to them. Because we wouldn't be keeping it at 70 degrees if,
Right.
so.
In the vein of that as well, I think there's a couple things we need to think about going forward. We're about to hit some really big challenges. Some things that I've talked to already are there windows weak in plastic? Are there, I've talked to Steve about the possibility of more of that weather stripping we talked about, making sure we're really sealing us in.
That's coming up.
Oh, okay, great. And then, yeah, it makes sense that if that's an expense that the library, it shouldn't come off of everything else. It should definitely, because they can not use it or use it.
Can we run those numbers and see if we can get an idea of what?
Yeah, I can certainly go back over what was used, particularly the town center buildings, all the buildings we've talked about tonight, the library, the annex,
It's just
and
not
give you an
possible
idea.
to know the difference because they're
It's
all
not going to be exact, the electricity is exact, the oil isn't. but
Right.
Yeah.
I can surely come back with those.
Well, it's the same thing with the propane, because the propane for all those structures comes out of one tank.
Yep.
There's no meter on each of those, so.
Right.
So let's say, I'll just pick on them, because they're the biggest users there in terms of the library. If they decide, hey, we don't want it at 72, we want it at 80,
Right.
town's still paying for that, so.
That's why if it's the library budget, that's still the town's money, unlike the historical society, which would be raising it through their own funds. So I think,
No, I see that difference, but
yeah.
you can't tell who's using it because there's no meters on it.
But then that might go into what you might be bringing up soon, which is one thing that can make it very easy for us to make good choices is to agree on set temperatures. We don't need to be so cold in here that we're freezing. That doesn't make sense. We don't need to be so hot in the winter that we're hot. We need to find reasonable numbers, and then we need to test to make sure we're keeping those, because that's just money literally being just yeah, why we're cold in a room on it, like, just make it warmer. There's no reason to pay for this.
And part of it is the buildings. I know the town office, for example, Denise in my office at the far end of the building can be in the high 50s, and Bill and Karen will be in the high 70s and wanting to shut the...
Isn't theirs broken anyway or something?
No, supposedly everything is fixed now, but
Okay.
there is about 3 zones of temperature, none of which relate to what you set the temperature on the thermostat at.
Who's responsible for fixing that though? Because we rent that building.
Yeah, we should be able to have consistent heat that we don't have to pay for.
But as we got to the end of the winter this year, I was ecstatic that we had consistent heat for a good week and a half at a time without having thermodynamic incorporated there.
We just can't afford that this year, like, that's not.
And I say that, but Mr. Daly picked up a fair amount of that repair, so most of it.
It's this building,
Yeah.
it gets repaired.
Okay, I'll come back with the best estimate of energy costs for some of those buildings. Moving on to wage increase impact, I do not have a specific amount for that. We had talked about what we had implicated this year going into 2023. I have most of it, as well as most of the completed cost out for police and fire wage and step if it were to go forward. I was not expecting to lose the finance officer for a week suddenly, and that sort of put the kibosh on nailing down the final details. That said, some of the increases made in 2022 are going to be significant. I mean, bordering on 6 figures when you put the ancillary costs in there. Beyond that, as the wage scale for the fire department is set right now, and that was essentially what I was copying for the police department. That was set up with 1, 3, 5, and 7-year bumps. You adopted it for 2 years, so right now you've pretty much seen the immediate financial shock. You have nothing coming up in year 2. I will present you with, and I'll do it before the next meeting too, it's just about completed, with the 1, 3, 5, and 7 impacts, which it'll give you a general idea. It's not going to be specific because it doesn't take into effect firefighter EMTs who bump up their certification, or police officers who get promoted, that sort of thing that you don't account for. But
Could we alternate the 1, 3, and those years so that the increase is more gentle overall?
I guess you
We haven't
could.
started yet? Yeah, that way we're just having you know what I mean? Like it's not.
Like police get bumped at 2, 4, and 8.
Well,
2,
or
4,
their year 1 is now, because we haven't done it yet, and last year
Okay.
was the other one, and that way we have a little more gentle.
Right now, the one that you've got that the board has accepted is the 1, 3, 5, and 7, and that was put together with an eye towards how long the average young
Right.
firefighter EMT had been staying in Lee.
Right.
If most people stick around for a couple of years, the fire chief had put that together and presented to you specifically based on those numbers, but.
But do you see what I mean? Like if it was 1, 3, 5, and 7 as well, it would just be different.
Yep, I
1,
do
3,
see,
5, and 7.
I do see what you mean. I can try to structure a couple of different,
Yeah, just like an alternating that way. I don't know.
Joanne will probably like me tomorrow, but.
We love you.
We'll start over.
I'm sorry. We're just trying to make sure that you don't have this, if it's every 2 years, it's a shock, it's gonna be hard. If every year there's some change, it's less
Right.
painful.
No, and I have some similar proposals. I have, not, the rates aren't factored in, but I have the steps from Dover, Durham, and I believe Raymond as well, which those are union towns, but they have very specific step and wage for
We're
every year. So
competing with them for employees, so it
Okay.
makes sense to.
So we'll have that for next time?
yes.
Okay.
Moving on, I've got a request to appoint Karen Rossi and Randy Stevens to complete the perambulation. This board had agreed to appoint Randy Stevens to do the perambulation. Randy does not want to endeavor in the public outreach and communication side of the perambulation, and would like to have Karen with him to do that.
Wise choice.
When we looked at it, we had only appointed Randy, and I would need a motion from the board to appoint Karen as their designee to
We just need to sign it.
complete the perambulation. Okay. Be
Yeah,
told that you just need to sign it.
great. I think that's a great idea. Okay. All of the preambulation, that's a word I did not know until last year.
I don't know if Randy has a chisel. Typically, according to the RSA, I believe you're supposed to chisel the date into each granite.
Nice.
Boundary marker.
Can we do like a little video? That sounds fun.
Most
Share with
towns
everybody.
use surveyors paint at this point, a quick touch, the GIS marking.
I think the chisel sounds exciting.
Well, your perambulation has been exciting in the not too distant past. You had somebody who actually moved one of your boundary markers.
Oh, well, interesting. There's always a story in me.
Can somebody name the 5 towns that need waters?
Newmarket, Epping, Nottingham, Barrington, Madbury, and Durham.
Very good.
Bravo.
We'll appoint you the next.
It's one of our
police chief.
questions on our FTO exam.
Oh,
Oh,
nice.
good. That's good.
Would you like to do preambulation?
Yes, would you look?
I think it would be interesting.
Would you like to preambulate?
I think that's like before you move. Pre-ambulation.
Next.
Next up, I had the annual fuel bid. We went out to bid, we contacted half a dozen suppliers, 5 of which wrote back to us and said, given the market at this time, they have no interest in providing a long-term bid. Hartman, our existing supplier, did. They gave us a quote of .2875 over Sprague rack.
For propane.
No, this is for fuel oil, number 2. We're actually on a multi-year contract for propane
So DF,
with,
Which was very wise.
DF for sure.
yes, DF Richard, and that had some involvement from the church and Jim Banks in it. But in looking at this and discussing it with the DPW director, we turned to the state contract, which is typically not the most competitive offered for fuel oil, but the DPW director thought he recalled that the contract the state provided had a clause in it that said that municipalities within the selected towns with highway sheds could participate at any time they wished. So I called and Irving has a state contract. I called the municipal director at Irving, and she said that was indeed the case, and their contracted price that is on a 2-year contract going through 23 is .1387 over Sprague rack. I wanted to bring that to the board before Steve and I contacted the state at Irving and said we want it in, but it's a little bit, it differs from the usual bid request and grant proposal.
I like less.
Less is a favorite number of ours.
Well, I think 15 cents less a gallon is going to add up, given that we use at least 8,000 gallons.
Yeah, well, let's look into that.
Okay, so if the board's in agreement, I think Steve and I will
So
move
let's
ahead
use
with
the
that.
state bid and not award anything on the bid.
Right. Very good. Under miscellaneous, with regard to ARPA funds, we've spent very little, if any, since the last report that I gave you at our last meeting. And that said, this Friday is, I believe, the beginning of the rollout date for the second tranche of ARPA funds. The DPW director wanted me to mention that before the money's all gone, he would like the board to consider letting him use $10,000 to repair the weather-damaged Sallyport wall in this building on the police side, which he's explained to the board a couple of times of the damage going on there. Even after the insurance claim, there's some damage that needs to be repaired.
One side, the other side.
Right. He is also looking to approach the board to earmark $8,000 of ARPA funding to build an overhang over the fire department door, which has been discussed not only because of the water, but because of potential ice and snow that comes off of there. And he would also like to earmark $10,000 for weatherization projects for multiple town buildings, including window sealing and weather stripping in doors that have worn out their weather stripping, that type of thing, with an eye towards energy efficiency.
Is that also replacing the doors that was replaced?
That's possible. When I talked with him, he mentioned those 3 items and said weatherization as a general category, but that may well include door
Yeah, the
replacement.
door is rotten on the bottom, bye-bye.
Chief?
One other thing, if we could throw it on your radar, the fire alarm system in this building is proprietary. So only Simplex is the only one that we can call, the only one that'll come out. They are very poor on their customer service. We can't get them to come out. When they do, the last call I think Andy was $1,400
Something along those lines,
for
yeah.
them to come out. If we need to replace a smoke detector, we have to get it through them, and it's about $1,000 for a smoke detector.
That's a really well
So-
organized business right there.
So Scott and I discussed this, and we were trying to get it possibly an estimate before the end of the year, because maybe he had enough in his budget and had enough in mine, but if we don't, so we had John from Easton Alarms, who's done the town hall alarms and started to do the transfer station. He's come in, he's looked at it, he said the panel and everything needs to be replaced. The way they have it set up, it actually boggled his mind. So we're just waiting for that to come in. But, I don't know what's gonna cost up front, but over time, every time we have to call them, like when they were in here doing the installation, we called to try to get them to disable the smokes. They wouldn't work with us. So the alarms kept going off.
Wow.
Then the guys replacing our AC unit in the bathroom had to disconnect a vent, something or other. So we had to call them to come in, and they came in, and they looked at it and said, oh yeah, there's supposed to be a vent, whatever. You're gonna have to plug it back in, left, and billed us, it was close to $1,400.
That is one way to do business.
So hopefully John will get back to us soon. I told him we'd like to hear before the end of the fiscal year.
Yeah.
So he's working on it, and
And it's not something that we can do ourselves, correct? We can't.
you can't, because you can't touch anything in here. It's simplex, that's it.
Right, but I mean, if we took over, it's not something that we can then repair ourselves if we did it ourselves.
Well, we would be able to replace smoke detectors, things like that.
Okay.
But it'd be a central panel that Scott, Chief Nemeth, would be in charge of.
Which makes much
He
more
can't
sense.
go down and do anything with that.
Right.
We have to call them in at a fee, where if it's ours, it's ours.
Yep. Sounds good. All
So,
right,
are all these things on our
next year.
list? They're all on our list?
We've talked about them in the past, doing the weatherization and things like that, but they weren't on our current.
I think we did have I thought we had the Sally Port and the fire
Oh, yeah.
door overhang on the financial plan, or it
Yes,
was
you
discussed
did.
it during those meetings.
I remember.
So we know how much the second amount of money is already, correct?
Yep.
My understanding, yeah.
It's the same, right?
So maybe it's time to get back together and have another conversation to see how those monies are allocated.
Yep.
Because I don't just want to say, yeah, Steve, you can have whatever you want. I think it needs to be considered with everything else we have out there,
Right.
so.
I agree, I just think that we want to make sure that things that can get moved quickly, because we are paying for electricity and for cooling. So if he can go ahead and weatherize now, that's great, and we're about to hit the hottest months. Have you felt anything with the new insulation? Or the new AC?
Amazing,
Yeah, all right.
amazing.
Keep saying that so we feel better about spending our
So
money.
It's great.
Let's, with that in mind, let's see if we can set up another financial planning tool meeting to go over, because we know how much the number is.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
we can allocate, because I know some of the things we said, okay, that's gonna be the second part, but
Right.
I think we need to consider these particular requests with everything else we've got. Not that I'm gonna say we're not gonna do them, but I think they just need to be considered. So,
Absolutely, and we have to prioritize, this is the last chance we have for this
yep.
kind of money.
Okay. Oh, it's.
Anything else?
I'm sure there is, but I'm drawing a blank at this
What
point.
about the e-crier? Do we have to discuss that?
Oh, yes, I can certainly bring that up under miscellaneous, and although I thought Paul wanted to be here.
Otherwise, he can't be here right now.
Okay.
We had actually reached out to Paul to come discuss those concerns with the board, and
He said it had to be after.
Right, and I will say for the board's enlightenment, I think his primary concern is including church items. And he does want to talk to the board.
What was the church item that was included? Was it the?
It was regard to
coffee?
it was regard to Easter, and we had been,
No, it was the most recent thing, I think, because I put the community coffee. It was
oh,
the
we
coffee
put the
fundraiser.
Easter event in, and we put the community coffee in, and the board had an address by a concerned member of the church who was also a citizen. At the time, I had called the municipal association and talked with Mr. Buckley, and he had, said your board is free to include religious groups if they want. He said just be aware that you can't pick and choose. You either have to include them all or exclude them all.
Okay, so far we've included everything
Yeah.
that's been asked of us.
We included any requests we
Right.
received.
And I think that the thing that's key here is the e-crier, we want as much of the community to read as possible. So the more we include parts of our community, the more eyes we get on all the other things, and we're all struggling to reach each other. So the more inclusive we become, the bigger that reach, the broader reach. So I would have to have a real reason to not include it.
Yeah, actually, he reached out after it was the chicken barbecue.
Oh,
That was the most recent thing.
And that's, I mean,
And that's something I typically put in,
Yeah.
well, before, like, I've put that in before years ago.
I just think it's an opportunity in our town to do something. So when, as long as we're inclusive, as long as everyone is allowed to advertise, unless, maybe we can have some restrictions on if you're a group trying to do harm to other groups, but besides that,
There's not much restrictions you can do once you.
Well, I think certainly harm or breaking the law. Or
it's
things you can
illegal,
restrict for,
right,
but-
it's illegal. So if you're a
Yes.
hate group, you can say,
If it's insightful.
thank you. So insightful, we don't have to put, but everything else we can include.
Insightful Methodists, or,
Yeah.
Okay, those Methodists.
as I said, I think Paul does want to address the board.
Okay.
That's fine.
Just as long as he knows that we have thought about it and it is something we did wrestle with already. But
And I did, Denise and I had several email exchanges.
just want to make sure we're addressing it quickly.
Anything else?
No. Just as you move into the consent agenda, though, I would like to ask that you pull the timber tax levy from the consent agenda.
Tax number 1?
Yes, and the reason for that is you should accept the timber tax levy as presented to the town, so the state gets the yield information, but you should also, in that motion, include the notation that you are not going to pay it, because
You're
for
gonna waive
municipalities, you can waive the fee.
Oh, okay.
Who's this for? Mike?
This is for,
Well, you're gonna deal with it later.
When we did our property, right? Right.
Yes.
We don't want to pay
I
ourselves.
see.
and I've got the, it's a bill for $262.27, which is based on the yield from, should be a copy here.
When was Clay Lane? When was something else?
Town of Lee, and this was off of Clay Lane.
Right.
Oh, okay.
See, I read my homework.
And I'll leave that out on top. because-
My
All right.
homework.
So consent agenda, anything else that any of the board members want removed? All set? So I move to accept the consent agenda as presented, except for item number 1. Do I have a second?
Second?
Any discussion? No. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
If you could
Keep that
either
separate.
make a motion to sign the timber tax levy and waive the levy tax, that would also allow us to send the yield form to the state and prevent the town from. Well, if you want to pay it, I guess $262 in the general fund.
Well, I think we should have Katrin pay it, because she says she's knowledgeable about it.
I said I knew where it was from. I don't think that counts. She
was
signed
voluntary
here,
to pay it.
so, yes, it looks like.
Ooh, do you give me like half a stack?
Yeah, I just think it doesn't matter if we separate everything.
Just one more.
And this is your revaluation abatements primarily coming back from Mr. Earls at Cross Country.
Okay, so I move to send the yield, we said the timber tax yield form to the state, but I choose not to collect the $262.27 to the town. Is that sufficient?
That would be.
Do I have a second?
Second? Oh, go ahead.
Any discussion? No? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Katrin? Aye.
Aye.
Motion
Aye.
passes.
Sorry. Trying to figure out which one I'm denying, which one I'm accepting over here. Very
It's
denying
like a
thing.
check mark.
I know. Oh,
No,
I
just
do
be-
like that, I'm just making sure.
Just be careful what you sign, because some of these are denied.
Right, there's a check mark next to the one.
Oh, the sneaky little check mark. I see, that's a sneaky one.
You did a great job, I just want to make sure I know what I'm signing. Trying to be
Oh,
responsible.
who didn't sign this one?
Katrin, it's okay,
We're
I've
half
got
and
it
half.
under
Oh, you didn't
situation.
sign Mr. Earl? Okay.
You just sign where you're supposed to, and we'll take care of the rest.
And anyone that wants to come down to the town offices next week and be present for the visitation we will be having with some of these folks, feel free.
Oh, no,
Sounds
thank
like a
you.
really good time, thanks. I'm super busy.
Where are we supposed to sign on this one? This says signature of assessing official. Is it just the
All
contract
three,
person?
on the left, there's spots for all three of you.
Should be.
This one is,
Right, it
Bottom
says
left.
signature of assessing official.
Yes, that's
We're
you.
assessing that
You
official.
are the
Yep,
assessing
you
official.
are.
You are the
Yep.
assessor.
Just wanted to make sure I
Should we
got
grant
it.
anything else? There's no
Make sure I was saying the right thing.
You have to look at the, I'm sorry. It says denied. You've got to put the recommendation.
denied, perfect, so then just, okay, thank you.
Those I didn't check.
I mean, you're making it so easy for me, I got
I
kind of
know.
spoiled, but.
These are the ones you have to, they're not as easy.
Especially when
Oh,
it's-
Jeff.
I
A
didn't
vape.
know if you all wanted to go with what.
There's nothing I saw that I disagreed with.
Oh,
No, that might be worth it.
But did any, I saw, did you guys go through all these? Because I did not disagree with any of these. Did you disagree with any of them?
Disagree with what? What do I disagree?
I went through them all.
The abatement decisions.
Oh, no, I was fine with them.
Okay.
So just know that I'm signing where
Where am I?
I'm following the secret code.
Why is it?
Our rationale
And
was
there's
made-
one that
made to
says-
tell you, so.
There's
You're good.
one that says,
So, on this one for the
No
Trails Committee,
recommendation.
it's
So then
just,
what do we do?
you need the chairperson, is that it? Is
I
that
believe
one?
it's just the chairperson, yes.
Okay, what do we do with no recommendation?
I guess you would say granted, no
You would have to,
What does that mean?
the board would have to.
What?
All right, board will have to.
Please,
We have one,
Oh, just say no.
making sure I'm on the trolley.
Okay, these are the ones she has to sign.
Yes.
Those ones right there, that one she, those two.
This one she does.
So,
Oh, this one she doesn't.
those don't do.
Right.
Do don't.
Those are back for me. I don't know what folder they go in. Sorry.
excuse my hand.
These are for you.
Thanks, my
On the bottom of your
friend.
pile.
I'll give you this fun stack. That's
Okay.
a beat
Why
tonight.
am I getting
Trying to
this?
get it over.
We were just told to ignore it, so just put it in the pile.
All right, so this is the one. Do you want to help us with that? Really, just sign.
We had one abatement recommendation that came back from Cross Country Appraisal Group that had no recommendation. And this was for property at 60 Hobbs Road. The comments were, this is clearly not a valuation issue, but a measurement issue, which is the responsibility of the town's assessor. If I had the information to change it, I would, but the town sketch does not match the taxpayer's sketch. So,
If you want Scott Marsh to take a look at that, he will.
Okay, let's do that. Let's have Scott Marsh take a look at that. What do you think, everyone else? Because we are a team and work together.
I didn't listen, what was the?
That's the problem.
we have an abatement recommendation from Cross Country Appraisal Group on the revaluation, and basically he's making no recommendation because he claims the measurement information provided at the town level is not sufficient. And Denise's recommendation was that we have Scott Marsh.
Is it intro to the structure?
I believe it is the.
Or is it a
It's the
lot
plot
thing?
plan. It's the plot plan. The applicant has drawn a map showing the area of the lot. Although there is no map attached here.
So this one, here we go. You're gonna get a stack of mess. What, this says,
Sign right there.
yep, we're the assessing official.
You are the assessor.
I never,
No, I'm only laughing because I asked that question.
oh, you did, sorry.
No, it's okay.
You tend to do the
It's,
same thing.
there's a lot to sign here, and that was not.
Sometimes I look, I see my
priority.
signature, and I go, can I read that carefully? Good, okay, so I've got it.
No, I'm with you. The same issue. These ones are signed by Katrin and I. Yes.
Yes, essentially,
That one? It's weird.
and I don't know that I necessarily agree with Mr. Earl, but he's saying that he has no way of verifying the measurement difference in the house that the property owner is claiming versus what the town tax card says. The property owner is claiming that part of the basement is crawl space.
So shouldn't we have a way to do that?
Yes, we would have our assessor go take a look at.
I very strongly
there's
think that
another
we
one.
should have our assessor, are you guys listening?
think you're
We
just-
very much should have our assessor go do that work, because we can't guess.
Yes.
Do you agree?
fair.
Yes, okay, so we'll put that back. We had a majority, so here we
You're doing
go.
a much better job apparently of picking your things apart than I did.
What do we got? Anything
Okay, this
from
is done.
Nice. Done, like done?
Done, like pass
I
it
did
on.
it already?
Yes.
Beautiful. Here's the done.
All right, everybody's done
Let's do
that
it,
one.
check mark.
She needs to do the
Yes.
roll.
I will sign all those.
So those are,
That's what goes on the bottom?
Yes. There's a
Here's
whole
a-
packet. And here's the piece of book that goes with it too.
Beautiful.
these.
These ones are also long, sir.
When the term camper is used, does that mean it's not a manufactured home?
Yes, that would typically indicate that it's in a campground, because you can only have limited residency in a camper versus manufactured housing.
And did we find out why we don't check in on these campers more?
From what I can find, this is a year-to-year thing that has gone on for quite some time in Lee
Okay.
with regard to the campgrounds and abandoned campers and ownership
We don't have
changes in
anyone that
campers.
checks
and-
anyway. But just once a year?
Yes. This is done.
And then we do lots and lots of
Yes.
this, and then we're good.
That one's done.
It's done.
Done.
That was good. That's some interesting phone calls from people about their campers.
Oh, okay, good. I'm sure you have.
So this one went through really carefully.
I would love to get one of those lawyers. Yeah, that's what we do.
It's
Done, so much done. Thank you for double checking our work. It's a little bit of a haphazard system we got going on here.
Oh, we definitely.
What does this go with?
That is, just goes with the elderly exemption
First.
denial for,
The denial one. There's only one that's denied. Did you? I don't remember, okay.
I think I've done those, yeah.
there was a PA 35 and a PA 29.
Well done. Beautiful.
Have to do those too.
We're getting there. Ooh, I'm super excited for the gold business.
Well,
You're not as excited? All right.
I'm excited.
I'm just excited to keep moving forward. Have you gone through this questionnaire yet? I have some questions.
I don't know whose signature this is.
Easy.
I think you missed that one too.
That's why we were
I think your track record is worse than Katrin's. I think.
Hey,
She
easy over
skipped
there.
an entire, like,
She
packet.
skipped the whole packet.
I don't think I skipped it, I think I
Yeah,
did.
it's a sign every page, and then you sign
Oh.
every page.
Did I get that back yet?
Yes, you have, I'm doing.
Okay. Trying to move fast here, guys. Move fast and break things, isn't that like a horrible thing to say?
Fastest, smoothest, fastest.
Oh, nice. There's a cute
That
little.
was painful. Whoa, whoa. All right.
Thank you to
Well done with
make
me.
all that paperwork happen,
Well,
because
me.
that is a lot.
Sorry, it's bad.
All right, section 5, old business.
Yes, and I'll be relatively brief here. We do not have a finalized quote for the electrical upgrade from PES Electrical. I talked with Chris LaRocca today, despite the fact that he is on vacation. There was a problem with New Hampshire Electric Co-op giving him access to the information he needed. I spoke with Chelsea Smith at New Hampshire Electric Cooperative shortly after I spoke with Mr. LaRocca, and she has assured me that this will be taken care of by tomorrow morning. So we're good to move forward. That said, the power purchase agreement that Revision provided us with had some inconsistencies and some differences from the 2019 contract, some of which concerned town council when they were looking at it. There were some terms of license and easement were used interchangeably. It referred to an addendum for a definition of the reason they were used interchangeably, and there was no addendum. That should be hammered out fairly quickly. Rachel Eads and their attorney had reviewed Joe DeMillo's recommendations from Mitchell Group and didn't think that there would be any particular problem reaching an agreement, but I have not seen the new contract for the board to sign as of today.
Great.
I had mentioned to both sides multiple times that it would be good to have that by today, but
That would have been helpful.
that did not happen.
But if we meet again later this week, could we discuss it then, if we put it on the agenda? If it needs, something needs to be
We
done.
could, if something comes forward, I could certainly do that, which is the next order of business. I have scheduled a meeting for Thursday, the 30th. Not sure, and I've already heard about this from a couple of people, but I called it the Town Building Committee.
We don't have a name.
I believe, so you don't have a name.
There's no committee.
Right.
There's no committee, yeah.
No.
The
it's
first
just
order of
to
business
discuss
would
how we're
be
gonna
to
discuss it.
discuss what you want to call the project,
it's
I
just-
guess, just so I can tag it with something that makes sense to people other than work session of board or.
I guess it's just a work session.
But we're not going to
Possible
post it
town-
as a work session in case we need to address revision
Oh,
contract.
good idea.
So, but under new business, I included the Plaza Sanderson questionnaire for the Board of Selectmen that came through with the year-end audit packet that we received. And I don't know that you want to answer all those this evening, but certainly just wanted you to be aware that.
Yeah, I just wanted to have a little help understanding some of the things I didn't understand, so I will come and ask
So-
about that.
Do we each have, oh, no.
Don't we all?
Why don't, it's only, I only have to sign it, so.
Right.
We'll do
so-
it together.
And when do they need this back by?
We have several weeks at least.
Okay, so why don't you get your questions answered and then.
Oh, if you're answering them, that's fine, then you'll know the answer. I just didn't know the answer to all of them.
Well, you can, if you want to, we can spend a few minutes, just go through them.
It was the right thing to do, it's not very smooth. Great, let's do it.
Do you have any
No time like
knowledge,
the present.
do you have any knowledge of any fraud or suspicions of fraud affecting your entity?
No.
Have you received any communications from employees, former employees, regulators, or others alleging fraud?
No.
Are you answering the questions?
You looked at me, but I wanted to answer.
Well, I'm just, I have a guilty conscience, so I have to
Oh.
look at you to be sure.
That's where you clear up your conscience. Nice to know.
Have you identified any specific risks of fraud within the entity?
No. Did we?
The only fraud risk that I can see is we don't have multiple people handling receivables.
Then write that down. Right?
We don't.
There's no division of duties, really, do you?
Well, we have basically a team of Denise, Liz, and Joanne that are overseen by Ben, but there's not a.
The issue is whoever brings in the revenue doesn't touch
Right.
things that go out, and I don't think we can say that.
No, that's not the case because either Liz or Joanne make deposits, so
So,
they certainly have some oversight and.
So you can point that out, and we pointed out several years in
So-
a row, and
yes.
we don't have the staff yet to make that work.
We did follow the auditor's guidelines of locking the checks in a separate receptacle as well as in a separate office and removing, I have view-only access to payroll activity, which are the two primary.
So number 3, has the board adopted a universal code of ethics for members and employees to follow?
I'm not familiar with your universal code of ethics.
So,
We have our own code of ethics for the
But
police
this is for
department.
the town as a whole.
Yeah, so we should do that. Can we put that on our
Good.
to-do list?
Because it says if yes, furnish a copy, and we can't furnish a copy.
So let's do it.
So if yes, oh, don't want to do that. Have you or any related party of yours had any interest, direct or indirect, in any of the following transactions or pending or incomplete transactions since July 1st, 2021, to which the town or any retirement, savings, pension, and/or other similar plan was or is to be a party? Sale, purchase, exchange, or leasing of property? Not that I know of.
I know.
Receiving or furnishing goods, services, and facilities? Not that I know of.
No?
Transfer or receipt of income or assets? No. Maintenance of bank balances as compensating balances for the benefit of another?
No.
No. And other transactions?
No.
No. Please describe, okay, we don't need to do that. Does the board have any concerns about known related party relationships? If so, please explain.
No.
Not that I know of. Does the board formally authorize all disbursements, both vendor and payroll, prior to the release of funds? Yes.
Yes.
Manifest.
Yep.
Describe how the board stays informed of the latest changes in the bylaws and regulations relating to the town.
Lots of
Town
things.
administrator lets us know. That's
And
about
we-
the only
and
thing that I
we-
have.
And we read the email from New Hampshire Municipal Association.
So, via town administrator
Different group updates.
and communications from New Hampshire Municipal Association.
Yeah, and then I read the paper. And you
Would
like
you like me to put down the Katrina reads the newspaper?
No, I'm just saying, like, I'm always getting information about what the local groups are.
Assorted media.
Assorted media, I love that. Yeah.
I already put Municipal
I
Association,
use
so.
Facebook, so obviously it's right on my.
Well, let's have a talk later about where we get our news from. Party affiliated.
Does the board review comparative reports of estimated and actual revenues and expenditure, appropriations and expenditures? Yes, well, some of us do, some
Yeah.
of us don't, some of us
Excuse
do. I'm
We
just
all do.
asking.
Yeah.
That was a question, not a statement.
All of us do.
All right. What procedure does the board follow in reviewing and using these reports? For example, does the board normally meet with the department heads as part of the process?
At
During
the
the
end of the
budget-
year, right?
during the budget
Not
process.
monthly or anything. That'd be fun.
It's not that long.
Do it every month. Okay.
Has the board approved a disaster recovery plan in the event of loss or interruption of IT function? No.
You have not.
We should do that. This is a good to-do list, I like it.
Is there a written investment policy adopted? Yes.
Nice. When was that last approved?
When was the policy last reviewed and approved?
It was last reviewed and approved in 2022, and Ben Jeans and Denise and I have had conversation about bringing it forward to your next meeting.
Great.
Okay.
So can we put the date of the next meeting?
I just put 2022.
We have this July.
Perfect.
Have you adopted the use of either credit or debit cards by employees? Yes. Yes. Please provide the policy. So can you attach that to the paper read? Does the board have knowledge of any funds or bank accounts that are not in the custody of the treasurer?
Well, does the one the police have count?
It's not
We are
town
completely
funds.
Okay, so make
disassociated
sure
from
that
that.
that's the only one I
It's not
know.
town funds.
Okay.
So, custody of treasurer, no. So the answer is no. Has the board approved a fund balance policy in accordance with GASB 54? Yes.
You have. And that may need to be updated too. I believe the last one was in 2020.
I'm gonna put it back in the folder.
is so neat, I love it.
Only this one time, because we gave her such a crap pile
But
last
did
time,
you
I
see
feel
how,
like we owe
like,
her.
within minutes, it was like, as if it was
Feel
handled by
bad
not
about
a
it,
package.
Do you want a copy of that?
Uh,
You left gave us another copy.
No, I don't,
Okay.
I don't need any more paperwork, thank you very much. All right, anything else under new business? I will do part of this and Andy can do the rest. I had a conversation with Rebecca Perkins Coca.
Quokka?
Quokka, get the K. So her assistant contacted us about more information about the whole thing about entities registering their vehicles not in the town that they're based in. So Andy gave out my private number, so I got a call from the municipal
I
association.
knew it was important to you.
Now we have
Anyway.
one. So they have made contact with her assistant and they're gonna give her information.
Great.
And it sounds like she's interested in putting forward something.
Great.
She said she didn't know anything about it. I know the municipal association's been politicking for this for a little while, so I'm not sure why she hasn't heard about it, but.
Pretty busy with all the other things going on.
So it sounds like something that she's interested in doing.
Great.
I don't know how much it will directly affect us, but it will affect other
Okay.
towns, specifically Portsmouth is one. She's from Portsmouth, so maybe that's giving her a little incentive. So.
It will definitely affect you. Probably shouldn't say this, and I won't name names, but as an insurance agent who insured a number of people in Lee that had commercial trucks, I know a fair number of them are
Okay.
registered across the
Well,
main border, for example.
If anything, it'll help out, because that's our biggest revenue is in terms of motor vehicles, so anything a little bit helps.
All right.
So. Anything else under new business?
Yes, well, it's old business, but a while ago, we had talked about the redistricting, and as a town, working with Dover on that lawsuit, then we found out that they wanted to have individuals, so we have individuals from the town of Lee that are participating, but now the towns of Dover and possibly Madbury and Barrington are wanting to join together in a select board and, town council type lawsuit because, and there's a whole bunch of information I can send you the rules, but any population of over 3,500 people should have a representative. We have for many, many years, and there's no reason we don't, and so they think that we can go forward with that. So are we still in agreement that we will enter into those things, and then do we have Andy reach out to Dover?
Yeah.
It's not Henry this time, because he's doing the individual one.
The Dover town attorney is who I would go to
Yes.
next, if it's not Henry.
Okay, and that we would have this time, unlike the other one where it was pro bono, this might have some small expense because we're going together and working on it. So
Well,
we
we
still
used
should-
to have our own rep, and then we shared one with Barrington, so.
Correct, because we, for the extra 1,000, which made sense. But this does not make any sense at all.
Okay.
We will lose all representation individually.
Okay, are we in favor of this? Rebecca, are you okay with this?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll authorize the town
Thank you.
administrator to pursue that. if you could
Yes,
please.
I will contact the Dover city attorney, town attorney, hope he's honest.
We say town in a loving way, we mean city.
Anything else under new business? No? Other business. So we've got 3 things still.
I have one thing under legal, actually, for non-public, and I don't know, Tom, did you need non-public this evening?
No.
So it would just be legal at this point.
So L, I have an A.
Okay.
So I move to enter into non-public session, New Hampshire RSA 91-8:3, Roman numeral 2, sections A and L. Do I have a second?
Second?
Roll call vote. Oh, any discussion? No. Roll call vote. Katrina Casper?
Yes.
Rebecca Hawthorne?
Yes.
Scott Bugby, yes. Motion passes.
Put this back here.
I move to seal the minutes from the non-public session. Do I have a second?
Second?
Any discussion? No. Katrina Casper?
Yes.
Rebecca Hawthorne?
Yes.
Scott Bugby, yes. Motion passes. Do we have times when the auditors are coming to visit us?
I have Not seen the exact date yet. Joanne replied to them. They wanted to come in September. Joanne replied that was a good time. They gave us, I believe, 3 dates in September, and Joanne also wanted them to come in earlier to take a look at, I believe, a couple of things regarding the trust funds that she wanted them to look at. But
Okay, all right. 3 more things. How are we doing in terms of people doing their minutes? Anybody that's straggling?
I haven't done an audit of that lately.
All right, can you do that for the next
Sure.
meeting? And the last thing I had is in terms of our committees, how many people do we have on the, like, the IT committee? Because we're looking for people. Housing, is housing okay?
housing is fine.
Readers okay?
Readers are great.
Readers are okay. IT is the 1 week spot. We have Dean Rubine as the sole member.
No,
Okay.
there's one other.
I thought there was 2.
Yes, there was, yes.
Oh, we had one other that expressed interest. Did we actually appoint them?
Who was that?
It was
Blue did.
somebody on the Conservation Commission's spouse, I believe.
Where did Pat Barber end up?
She's on the
CIP?
CIP.
CIP, that's it, okay.
So
We
she's
have-
the only one on that
We
one?
may potentially have 2 people on the IT.
Could we make a town, like a request to join the CIP on the webpage, the Facebook page, and then we can get that out there and
Yep.
just ask again and say we're just looking for anyone?
Facebook, yeah, I put it on the e-crier, and I think.
We're
I've got
talking
it on
about
the
like an
website.
hour once a month, right?
I did have a conversation with Court Bloomquist, because he was the one that was pushing the
Yeah.
IT committee.
Yeah.
And I said, well, you push it for it, then
Yeah.
his life is,
Busy.
yes, starts with H, 4 letters, you fill in the other 3. He's got so many things to do, so he said, yeah, I understand, I push for it, but he's just got too much to
Is
do.
he still
Correct,
at
that's a
ABC?
good idea.
Excuse
Is
me?
he still at ABC?
Yes, I think he is. But
Denise,
he's got
Denise
too-
first tried to strong arm him and then tried to trick him into
Trick
signing up
him.
for the IT.
So I will repost when you post
Okay,
and
I
we'll
will-
see.
There's
will
gotta be
let
other
them know.
IT people.
Keep recruiting. A lot of these full committees are full because we've recruited people. So
Yeah.
recruit people that you know are good at the stuff.
We need somebody besides the usual suspects, that's the problem.
That's what I'm saying. So look into your friend groups that you haven't.
Yeah.
Somebody said once that you get about 20 people that show up a lot. Let's expand. 30 people that show up.
Same group.
Yeah. But not anymore.
the-
Getting new people.
I'm just full of stuff tonight.
You really are.
One of the things that we haven't done for 2 years is the volunteer award. We haven't done that.
yeah.
And we haven't had the dinner because we have no money. So I think there's one person I have in mind that I would like to nominate, but I think we need to do that particular process this year. We usually reward in December.
All right.
So I don't know if you ladies are interested in doing this year.
Mhm.
But I think if we put something in the e-crier that we're accepting nominations for the volunteer of the year
If
award.
we don't have enough money to have an event, could we do a potluck?
Yeah, you could.
And then that way we could still have a way to do it and we're just
That's fine.
volunteering more
That's
by
fine.
bringing food?
That's fine. Yeah, because I stripped it out of the budget for this year, so.
Right, so we could have it in downstairs and at least it's something and it's,
Yeah.
but just, I don't know if December's a great time, but just something. I just feel like it's a nice to acknowledge.
For potluck.
Yeah.
That's
so,
true, that's
well,
true.
Let's, because you have the wording from previous years, see if we could put something in the e-crier, and then maybe on the website, Facebook page or something like that.
Okay.
If you ladies are amenable to.
Oh, no, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, it's
Like,
always fun and it's a great way to get to know what the other ones are doing and.
Yeah,
Yep, yep.
I think a potluck is great. I
Okay.
don't know if December.
I know somebody that makes very nice cupcakes,
I could make you,
but not one of those ginormous.
I'm good.
I showed that at work, they
cake.
said, how do you get that thing out? I said, I have no idea.
What about like a October before Halloween?
That's fine.
So it's not like the busiest time
I'm
of
not
year.
wedded to December, but
Like an Oktoberfest pot roast.
Ooh, there we go. Denise, you have
I
something.
mean,
in your
sort of
mind.
like.
Yeah, that's fine. Does that sound, I mean, I wish we could do more for people and we could say, look, we'll put it in the budget for next year, but for this year, just have a chance.
that's fine.
We always used to do, it was really fun, yeah, Flag Hill, when
I
I was
understand,
there.
but
I know,
there's other things I'd rather pay for.
Yeah.
that's true,
Not that I don't appreciate people, but
Yeah.
we also have to appreciate our employees
that's true too.
All right,
and our building.
that's all I had. Anything else? Motion to adjourn? Second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Free though.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
I do think that they work for free, so it's nice to have some